Hey everyone, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing the May reading wrap up. We have Clementine and Fiona in the background. A little bit of a messy sofa, but we're gonna try and do our best. And yeah, I'm just gonna let you guys know all of the books that I have read in the month of May. To be fair, we're May 29th today, and there are a couple of days left in the month, but I'm gonna just kind of count the books that I finish in the next 2 days towards the June reads because my schedule just really needs me filming right now. So that is what we're gonna do. Couple of updates, life updates that I wanna bring you up to speed on. For those of you who have been wondering, I finally got my car back, so yay! That happened yesterday. And there was almost $13,000 of damage, which thankfully I did not have to pay. It was all covered by the insurance, thank God. But yeah, it was like, you know, if you guys were here when I showed you the photos of the accident, it really didn't look like it could be that much damage, but there literally was like that much damage. So I got my car back. I didn't have to pay anything. The insurance found us 0% at fault. But yeah, it was a crazy bill on that, but it was all covered by the insurance. So I finally have my car back, and I'm super duper happy about that because the loaner that they gave me was a total boat, and I was really not having a good time with it. So now that we've caught up on that little bit, let us get straight to the books. I have a little print list and some books to show you guys today. So I do have a little bit of an order for you guys, which I'll try and separate into sections online if I remember to do it, but we're going to be talking about my DNFs. We're going to be talking about my library books. Then we're going to be talking about the one arc that I read. Then we're going to be talking about audiobooks, and lastly, we will look at the physical books that I have managed to read from my physical TBR. So the first thing I want to talk about are the DNFs. All right, so A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. That one was a DNF. I think I was 78 pages or so into that one before I just couldn't torture myself anymore. That book just, I guess, I don't know, just didn't age well, was very boring, very slow paced, no plot that I could understand. And yeah, it was just like, I don't know, I had a set of like the first 4 in the Earthsea trilogy, and as soon as I DNF'd that book, I actually put all 4 of them up for sale on eBay, and within a week they sold. So hopefully the person that received them is super duper happy to have them, but like for me, it was just not wow. I was really not having a good time in that world. So yeah, no, I don't know. I don't want to say Ursula K. Le Guin is not for me because honestly, I've never read anything else that she's done before, but I feel like I had not a great experience with The Wizard of Earthsea, and I don't know if I will be inclined to pick up another Le Guin book ever in life again. So yeah, that might be a little harsh, and I'm sorry to you guys if you really loved that series, but it was just not working for me. Again, super boring, nothing happening, and also the language was like kind of alienating. It just was not a very immersive language. I think that it was probably a product of its time with a lot of like 1960s. It just kind of had like an old school kind of a vibe to it, and I was just not jiving with it. So that one went out the window. The next book that I DNF'd, we're gonna have a lot of controversial DNFs in this video, was Snuff by Terry Pratchett. So I've spoken to you guys about that in a previous video before. I won't get too much into it today, but essentially the reasons that I DNF'd that book are much for the same reasons as I DNF'd the Earthsea. It was a question of very slow pacing, very slow plot line with basically no plot, nothing happening there, and just no chapter breaks, which was really hard for me. Because I do need to have my chapter breaks in order to consider myself somewhat successful in what it is that I'm reading. So yeah, Snuff was not great. I did read some of your guys' comments if you commented on that video to try Mort and try like the Witches series. And I know that the City Watch, like Snuff is part of City Watch. And I know that that's a series that a lot of people really like and really appreciate, but I just couldn't, I don't know. I just couldn't get into it. And so I still have my copy of The Fifth Elephant, which I am terrified to read. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to pick up another Terry Pratchett anytime soon. You know, okay, moving on. We have Space Opera. Space Opera was a book that I took out from the library. So yeah, I just didn't like it. I didn't like the way it was going. It was trying too hard. I don't like when books try too hard. Like when they're trying too hard to stand out and be unique, and it just like there was something about the writing that I just couldn't get absorbed into it. Lots of run-on sentences, lots of like trying to create a fantastic like space opera-y type of vibe, I guess, which is normal because the book was called Space Opera. But I think that the premise of the book, as far as I understood, was a type of like America's Got Talent or that kind of thing that was happening out in space. And I think it had a really good premise. I just didn't like the execution. I think that the author is potentially not for me. Although I've only ever tried that one book by this author, so if you guys know anything else about the author and you think that the other works might be of more interest to me because they're told in a much more straightforward way, I have a rising sign in Virgo. I like things to be super clear, you know, super clear. So, and it just wasn't. It just, this book like went totally all over the place for me. So I was not in a happy place. So I had to DNF it, but I didn't feel too bad about that because it was a library book and I was able to right away take it back to the library and not waste any more precious time on that one. Gideon the Ninth. Gideon the Ninth, another DNF. Okay, so I know that Gideon the Ninth is a much beloved book on any bookish platform, basically. I made it a good way through that book. I did. I really gave it a good old college try. And in the end, I was not vibing. I was not vibing, and I really, really wanted to. And I can't exactly tell you why I wasn't vibing. It was another library read for me. I took it out of the library. I read, I don't know, maybe about 30% into it, and I couldn't. It was so, I guess, what do I want to say? I just had trouble following the setting and the story and the plot line and the thing with the bones and and there was a lot of like stark transitions between one scene and the other, and I don't know, I think I just was not vibing with that series for one reason or another, and I can't really put my finger on it. So yeah, Gideon the Ninth and of course subsequent volumes of that series will just not be in my vortex because I don't know, I couldn't vibe with it. I couldn't get into it. It just, and I'm sad about that because I see it on a lot of favorites lists and a lot of bookshelves of some of my favorite booktubers, and I couldn't, I tried, you guys, I tried, but it just was not jiving with me. And eventually I found myself wanting to pick up other books instead of that one, which is never a good sign. So I figured I may as well just return it to the library, and that's what I did. Then there was Shards of Honor by Bujold. Okay. I'm looking at you, Angela, from the Literature Science Alliance, because if you guys don't know Angela, she's lovely, wonderful. I have been following her for 5 years on BookTube, and I know that Angela, I don't know if you're watching this or not, but like Angela, we're going to talk about Angela in the third person, and I will link her channel down below for you guys to go check out. So that'll be in the description for you. But Angela put out a video recently about having finished the it's a should you read video about having finished the entire Verkosigan series, and I had some of her caveats in mind when I decided to DNF this book. So I think I got, again, around the 100-page mark in the book, which is almost close to about 50%, but the book just didn't make sense. It's the first book in Verkosigan series that Bujold put out in the sci-fi sort of space opera realm, but it was a little bit the writing and a little bit the bluntness, I guess, of the characters, and also the insta-love did not work for me. So I don't know, I could not, I tried, I wanted to. In fact, the reason that I picked up Shards of Honor to begin with was because of the love with which Angela reported on this series, and just like, she totally influenced me, totally. And I was like, yay, I'm gonna pick up a Bujold. I paid like $20 and had that shipped from the UK on eBay because I couldn't find a copy of Shards of Honor anywhere in Canada, but that's besides the point. I really wanted to read it. My library only has copies of Bujold in French, my library network, so I don't read in French generally, so I don't know, I really had like a lot higher hopes for the Verkosigan saga, and I also have a Miles Mystery and Mayhem copy of which is like 3 different stories in the Verkosigan saga that don't necessarily need to be read in order, but as I understand, we have the 2 characters in Shards of Honor that meet, whose names I don't even know. I like really did not resonate with that book so much that I can't even remember the characters' names, but there is Verkosigan, who's one, and then the lady that he saves / takes prisoner and then insta falls in love with, and I just, Miles Mystery and Mayhem Miles is their like child that comes later in their relationship, as I understand. But yeah, just not jiving with that series. And I'm hard pressed to understand what people like about it. And, you know, I wanted to see what Angela saw. I did. I really did. And I have only nice things to say about Angela, but I was so convinced that I was going to love this series, and I just really didn't. So it's, you know, like yeah. And I spoke to Angela about it too, because I left a comment on her video saying that like, it was just not working for me. And she was very good natured about, about my response, which I appreciate. So yeah, I will leave a link to Angela's channel and also possibly the video that I'm talking about down below in the description if you guys want to go check it out. I think she made some really good points, but I was erring more on the side of the caveats, and that's kind of what caused me to DNF that series. Okay, moving on, there's another library book I want to talk to you guys about that I DNF'd, and I DNF'd this book 18 pages in, and that is Vox. I will put up a little picture here because I don't remember who the author is, but the reason that I DNF'd that book is because I immediately was too sensitive. I was too sensitive about it. I did not want to go past 18 pages because I felt like the whole premise of women only being allowed to talk 100 words per day is not too far from a possible reality. So I got all up in my feels and I was like, I am not going to read that book because I know it's just going to give me nightmares, essentially. So I had to DNF it. Like, I needed to not continue there. I don't know where the story goes. I know it's an older novel. It's been around for a few years. I even went to check out some other YouTubers' videos to see like what their synopsis of the story was. And I don't know. I guess I don't like novels where women are so like, it's for the same reason that I won't read The Handmaid's Tale. I will never read it, or possibly anything that Atwood puts out, because I just don't like to voluntarily read books where women are being persecuted and, you know, shoved down and like dehumanized, you know, and it's not a good time for me. So I just don't want to spend my time reading sad stuff like that. So I just DNF Vox after 18 pages, because for some reason I thought that it would be a really interesting story, but the tone of the novel in the first few pages or a couple of chapters was just so like foreboding and depressing and honestly frightening that I couldn't handle it. Like, I'm way too sensitive for that. So nope, that one went back to the library unread. Okay, the next book that I DNF'd, this was on Audible. So I had gotten a couple of, like a 2-for-1 credit on Audible. So I bought 2 books and it only cost me like the 1 credit. This one was the Intergalactic Exterminators Inc., which had like a really, really strong start, really strong straight out of the gate, but then got like super weird. So it lost my interest, basically. I love the cover of the novel. It's got 2 actors, 2 points of view, a male, female point of view characters. It started out with really good, strong sci-fi elements, but then eventually confused me, lost me. Really cool alien creatures that are insect-like and stuff, but ultimately I lost interest in it, and I was not jiving with it. It started out very, very strong and then just kind of petered out steadily until I lost interest in it about halfway through and decided that I wasn't going to waste any more time on it. And then the last controversial DNF that we're going to talk about, please don't unsubscribe, is going to be Dungeon Crawler Carl. So here's the thing. It did the same thing to me. Lit RPG, I don't know if I jive with that. I get it. That Dungeon Crawler Carl is a much beloved fantasy series, but I just couldn't, I don't know, it just was not holding my interest. I get it that it's funny and clever, but it's just too wacky. It's just too wacky for me, and I could not, I found myself reaching for other more solid stories than trying to go back to that one all the time. And I wonder if it's not because I had downloaded it on my Kindle. And you guys, if you know me at all, you will know that e-reading, not my favorite way to read. So right away, it had that bias against it. It had that sort of strike against it. I don't know, I just lost interest in it. You know, like I was reading it over a couple of months, and I don't think it's for me. I just don't think it's for me. And that's nothing against Cinnamon, and it's nothing against people that find the series incredible. I could see where you're coming from, but I was really excited and really hyped up about it for like the first week that I started reading it. And then after, I don't know, I just kind of lost interest. And if I lose interest, or I find that my interest is deviating somewhere else, then it's an indication to me that the book is not for me. So I did give it a good try. I actually even bought the first 7 books on Kindle because they were having like a big special on it. And in the end, I ended up returning all of the books because I just couldn't get into the series or justify having spent the money for something I knew I was never going to read. So yeah, I wanted to like it, but in the end, it just wasn't doing it for me. So if you guys love it, good for you. Good for you. No hard feelings. But you know, for me, it was just not doing it. I just did not have the time, in terms of like a good time, or actually physically the time to spend in that book. So yeah, that was a DNF. So just to summarize the super amazing popular books that everybody loves that I have DNF'd: Wizard of Earthsea, Snuff by Terry Pratchett, Gideon the Ninth, Shards of Honor, Dungeon Crawler Carl. Please don't unsubscribe. Okay, let's talk about some library books that I read in May. So the first one that I read, that I completed, that I absolutely loved, and I'm pretty sure I gave 5 stars to, is How to Be Eaten, which I'll put up a picture on the screen because, again, I have my list of books, but I didn't write the authors or anything, so I don't know who they're written by, but I love that one. So How to Be Eaten, if you guys are unfamiliar with it, it's kind of like a fractured fairy tale type of story, fairy tale retelling, which I could always get behind. I love that so much. They are 5 women that come to this kind of support group for people that have been sort of hurt, I guess. It's like a group therapy type of thing. And they all talk about the various reasons why they're there, but they were actually kind of recruited. They were sent like secret messages to be invited to the group, and they all, for one reason or another, decide that they're going to show up and sit down and take part in this meeting, and they each tell their stories. So one of them is taking on like Little Red Riding Hood, as you can see from the cover. Another one is a retelling of the story of Bluebeard. Another one is it happens to be taking part in kind of like The Bachelor type of thing. So even though it's not a fairy tale retelling, it kind of gives like a fairy tale wedding or a fairy tale relationship. So she's included in that group. And then there's another one is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, and the last one is a retelling of Hansel and Gretel. And it all just takes the points of view of the women who are present in these stories and how the men that they interact with kind of affect them. And I had a really good time with this book. I found it very engaging. The prose was very accessible. It was nice, easy, light writing. And I finished it really quickly. So for me, that was a 5-star read. If you guys have never heard of it, I highly encourage you to go check it out, especially if you like fairy tale retellings, because it's kind of told in a way where each of the women gets their own like 15 minutes in the spotlight. So even though it's a novel, it kind of reads a little bit like short stories. Everyone comes in to their various sessions, and then one of them sort of takes over and tells her story. So it's kind of like short stories, but not in like a novel format. So I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I like fairy tale retellings. It really works for me. And this one was one that really, really worked for me. The next one was another fairy tale retelling, but this one took a different spin. So I took out from the library, it's a short novella, The Crane Husband. So that, of course, is based on The Crane Wife, which I don't know if I've ever read, but I really liked this one as well. It was giving a very dark, macabre, gothic type of feel. It's about a girl and I think her little brother. I think she's 15 years old, and she's meant to kind of look after her little brother while the mother kind of loses her mind and becomes sort of a victim of this magical crane husband that kind of takes her away from her children mentally, physically, and emotionally. It's a novella, very short, very well told. I liked it. And also the cover is beautiful. That was what initially attracted me. So like I said, it's a good fairy tale retelling. There's not really much more to say. I had a good time with it. It was kind of giving the vibes of like A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. So same type of vibe. The last library book that I read in May is The Golem and the Jinni. And that one, okay, so I had to renew that one a few times. It's not because I didn't like the story. I found myself skipping pages because it was really long for no reason. And I don't think I'm going to pick up the sequel. I know that the sequel was written many years, I think like 8 years after the first one came out. But I don't think I'm going to be continuing in that series because it was good. It had good writing, but it's not enough to interest me to want to revisit that world again. So basically the story is about a golem from Kabbalistic folklore and a jinni, obviously from Arabian folklore, and they kind of are in a way trapped in their lives, and they come to befriend each other and help each other out and stuff. And I don't know, like I feel like it kind of lost momentum for me somewhere along the way, and I really wanted it to end with like a bigger punch or a bigger bang. I wanted something a little more satisfying, I think. I'm I'm not really sure, but like it started off really, really strong coming out of the gate and then kind of fizzled away. I mean, I found the ending satisfying, but not satisfying enough that I would want to continue in the story and see where these two characters are going. So anyway, I'm not really sure what else to say about this book aside from the fact that it's a book about friendship. It was just like a long book. It didn't need to be that long. I'm not really sure how to summarize anything more for this book because it wasn't an upsetting read, but I just didn't like it enough to want to return to it. And there was some points where I felt like I had to return to it, like I probably should have DNF'd it, but I didn't. And it kind of ended well, and I liked the story, but I was just really glad to be rid of it and to return it to the library. I just felt like an overwhelming sense of relief. Okay, so let's now talk about the arc that I read. I only read one, and that was Veronica Roth's To Clutch a Razor, which is the second in the Curse Bearer series. And that was an arc that I got from NetGalley. I enjoyed it. I think I probably would have liked the physical book better because I had to read this one again on my computer screen. Not a big fan of e-reading. So I think that probably took away a little bit of the enjoyment for me. Like I really need to learn not to accept arcs because they will give them to me on either my Kindle or my tablet or my laptop screen, and I tend to not like to read on screens too much, which always puts like kind of a storm cloud over the book to begin with, which really isn't the book's fault. It's just because I wanted to know how the story continued, but I feel like reading it on an e-reader, which is my least favorite way to consume media. When I read the first book, which is When Among Crows, I remember feeling really excited, really looking forward to reading the next one. Kind of annoyed that I would have to wait until September because To Clutch a Razor will come out in print in September of this year. And I didn't want to wait, but I feel like I probably should have waited because by the time I started reading this book, I'd already forgotten what happened in When Among Crows, and I really liked When Among Crows. Like, I think it was a 5-star read for me. And this one, I don't know if it made it to 5 stars. Honestly, I don't. And I don't think it's the book's fault. I think it was just me consuming this particular media in a way that I don't necessarily jive with, which is 100% on me, has nothing to do with the book itself. Now let's talk about audiobooks. So I read 2 audiobooks this month. One was Chlorine, and the second was Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. So Chlorine, Jade Song, I think is the author. Super creepy mermaid horror. You should all go read that book if you haven't. It is about a girl that is a competitive swimmer who eventually decides that she's going to become a mermaid, and she makes that happen. She makes it happen. But it is the how she makes that happen that will make you want to read this book. I listened to it on audio and I found it absolutely chilling. I had a good time with it. There's sapphic elements. It is a coming of age. And it's horror. It's horror. It's horror. So despite the cover, if you guys want to have a creepy time, I would pick this one up. Chlorine. Okay. Paladin's Grace. I loved. I actually have a copy. So I actually have a copy of the book, which I bought after having listened to it on audio, and I just love it. This is, I think, the UK cover. It's so cute. This to me, and you guys are going to hear me sort of gush about this in a later video that I have coming up for you in like a couple of weeks or so, which is already uploaded, but you guys are going to see it a little bit later than this video. But I bought the full set, so you'll see the full set in that video. But I just loved this book so much, and I say in that video, and I'll say it again here, this is romantasy done right, okay? This is like non-cringe, not formulaic. You have these 2 characters who are awkward and older. She's in her 30s, he's in his 40s. They're not your typical romantasy characters. They're not your typical young, pretty girl and like the super hot, you know, fae guy that she's into, like the type of stuff that I would never read because it would make me cringe too much. Because you guys know, if you've been here a minute, how I feel about romantasy in general. And this, what I like about this book is that Kingfisher doesn't sacrifice the plot in order to prioritize the romance. And that's what I like. It's a very well fleshed out world with, you know, well thought of political systems and religions. And the romance is almost secondary. Almost, you know, it's just that you see a lot of the characters' internal monologue. You see how they doubt themselves and how they each think that they're not worthy of the other one. And it just reminded me a lot of my husband and I when we first got together, because we were both in the process of getting divorced when we met each other. And we both were coming to the relationship with our individual traumas and insecurities. And, you know, in my case, I had 2 cesarean sections. So I had like body scars and, you know, there's so much doubt, especially when you're like in your 30s and you're meeting someone else for, you know, and starting a relationship. There's so, if you've been there, you know, like it can be a very sort of embarrassing time. You're a time where you're full of self-doubt, where you don't know if you're worthy, where you don't know if you're attractive, where you don't know if anything you say is going to turn the other person off. So I really related to this book a lot in those aspects, and also because she's a very entrepreneurial character and she says what's on her mind and doesn't necessarily filter, and I could relate to that personally a lot. And he's also very tall, very handsome, very taciturn, very introspective, and that is literally Eric. So I related to this book probably a little too much, because they were kind of doing this silent dance around each other the entire time, and it was like, oh my God, could you get together already? And it was the kind of cute romance that really, these guys are like a vomit couple. Do you know what a vomit couple is? I was accused of being a vomit couple by my best friend when I first got together with my husband, who's now my husband. When I first got together with Eric, people said, oh my God, they would say to me, you guys are so cute, you make us puke. That's what this book gives. They're so cute, they make you sick to your stomach. So if that's something that you guys are into, I immediately went out and bought the full set. As I said, I listened to this one on audio. They did a really great rendition of it, but I wanted the books for my bookshelf. So if you guys want to see the full collection, that'll be coming up in an upcoming video, and I'll show you like all 4 of them, but I immediately went out and bought them because I just had to have them. So yeah. Paladin's Grace, T. Kingfisher. Now let's talk about the books from my physical TBR that I actually managed to read. So yay, we always have to give ourselves pats on the back when we read the physical books on our TBR, which I managed to accomplish quite a few. So I'm going to tell you what they are right now. You guys have heard me talk about this before on the channel, albeit briefly. But the first one that we're going to talk about is Vita Nostra. I finished this book, I don't even know how. I don't know how, aside from, it's very hard to explain, but like aside from reading a sentence, then reading the next one and reading the next one and reading the next one, and then all of a sudden, after you've done that a whole bunch of times because you're not really sure what you just read, so you read another sentence because you're hoping for more clarity, and then before you know it, you're at the end of the book. And I don't really know how else to explain this, because there is no way that my brain can otherwise explain this book. It is a kind of dark academia type novel about a girl who gets recruited by a nefarious character who tells her that she has to go to this school where she's going to learn to be something other than what she is, and she's only going to find out what that is once she goes through the various processes of whatever scholastic outline they have for her. But there's lessons that she has to memorize that are impossible to memorize, and texts that she has to read that are impossible to read because the writing or medium that she has to read is just not something that her brain can comprehend. And then basically there's points where her brain kind of breaks, you know, and with that comes physical deformities, inability to move properly, and then eventually she comes to understand why she's there and who she is. And it's not a book that I disliked, but it's not a book that I don't want to get rid of it, but I'm terrified to read the sequel, you know? And I'm also hoping at the same time that if I read the sequel, I'll understand more about what happened in this one. So again, you know, I have mentioned it before on this channel, and I'm still sitting with it because I need to still sit with this. And if you guys have read it and you want to discuss it in the comments, your theories and things like that, feel free, because I will happily discuss this with you. I actually even watched, after finishing this book, some other YouTubers' videos about it and their interpretation. And I don't think that my view about this book is clearer. I know what happens in the book, like statically. I understand what was happening. But when you're in the book, it's like you're on this wild roller coaster ride that when you get to the end, you're like, oh my God, it's over, but like, how did I get here? So I know that doesn't tell you anything about what this book is about. I would highly suggest you look into it yourself. It's a good book, but I don't know why it's a good book. I can't put my finger on it. So Vita Nostra. Then I was at like a Winners Home Sense, and they had a big section of books there, and I picked up An Evil Heart by Linda Castillo, or Castillo probably is how you pronounce that. And this is book, I want to say number 15 in her Kate Burkholder series. Now, I've never read her before. This was my first exposure to her as an author and Kate Burkholder as a character and this kind of like mystery, Amish-centered mystery series. And I didn't like this. I didn't like it. There was something about the writing that just, it started out really well. It started out with a kind of really violent scene, which was expertly written. But then the rest of the book just kind of went downhill from there. And I found myself skipping pages, and then I ended up getting disinterested and just reading the last little bit to see who the murderer was. And it was just like, I don't think I'll pick up any more books from this series or from this author because I found it kind of mid, and there's no reason to waste my time on what I found was very weak and uninteresting writing. And it just, I made it through, but it was very meh for me at the end. So I did give it 2 stars, which is my meh rating. I didn't give it 1 star because it wasn't a DNF. It was enough for me to finish the book, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't skip pages. So that's never a good sign. So I don't know. I don't know if this author is for me or not. Like I said, I came into like a 15th book in the series, not having started with the first one. But even so, there was something about the writing that I just felt wasn't good. So I didn't like it. But we can discuss that. For me, it wasn't working. Then I picked up a nonfiction book. This is The Wager by David Grann, and I absolutely loved this one. I really loved it. I took out The Lost City of Zed from the library, but eventually I didn't have time to read it, so I had to send it back to the library. But it did make me also want to buy Killers of the Flower Moon, so that will be on my next physical TBR, so I picked up a copy of that one as well. But The Wager tells the story about a ship that gets lost off the coast of Patagonia, and the shipwreck, there's a mutiny, and then the sailors eventually get back to England where the primary party and the mutinous party each tell their version of events, and it's left up to the reader to decide which version of history they believe. I think that Gran is an excellent writer, and it would not take much for me to read the entire backlist. The cover of this book is fantastic. Let's just talk about that for a second. But also, can I just say that as a diehard fan of the Live Ship Trader series, it's very hard for me not to want to pick up a nautical book, whether it's fantasy or nonfiction. I'm very much like in that ship sort of mentality right now. Like actually currently on Audible, I'm listening to Dan Simmons' The Terror, but I've already seen the series, you know, so I'm just listening to it so I have something that I can sort of quasi listen to while I'm working. But I'm very much like into the whole ship business. Let's not even talk about how much I love Black Sails. Can we just not, please? So it's just like a really, really good book if you want a nonfiction sort of narrative account of the shipwreck of the Wager around Cape Horn and the goings-on that happened in that historical period. So yeah, this was a really, really good read. Not something I would read again, but I do want to have it on my bookshelf. Like, you know that feeling when you know you're not going to read it again, but you want to have it. So I'm definitely not going to unhaul this one because I really enjoyed it. I loved it, and I love the cover too much to ever get rid of it. The next book I picked up is The Scent of Burnt Flowers, and this one here is by Blitz Bazawule. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, but here is a picture of the author for you. So this story centers around a couple named Melvin and Bernadette who are on the run from the American authorities, the FBI, after Melvin, in defense of Bernadette, commits a murder, and they have to flee. And Melvin is friends with the contemporary president of Ghana, so they decide that they're going to flee to Ghana in hopes of gaining sanctuary there. Anyway, I don't want to say too much more about it because it's going to give away the story, but basically it is a tale of, takes place in the 1960s, and it's got magical realism elements in it, and I don't know, it was a good time, but kind of lost me a little bit in the magical realism aspect of it. Like, I think it would have been a much more interesting story if it was probably just written as a straight lit fic without that magical realism element in it, and I was kind of a little bit gutted by the ending. So I will say that. So for me, I think I gave this book 3 stars, perhaps 3.5, I'm not exactly sure, which is a very good rating in my rating system. So yeah, aside from the magical realism realism element of it, which I think that the book could have possibly done without, and probably is what knocked it down a star level in my opinion. It's a really great book. It's a short read. It's coming in at under 240 pages, so it's something that can definitely be read in one day or two, depending on your reading speed. And I think it just ended up being, you know, it was one of those books that broke up the monotony of all of the books that I had been reading, which were mostly fantasy and sci-fi. So this was giving magical realism, but leaning more towards lit fic. So I liked it. This was okay for me. Next, I read The Ministry of Time. It came to me via Instagram, one of my followers' suggestions as I was trying to figure out what to read next. Somebody said, pick up The Ministry of Time, so I listened, and I liked this one as well. I know that this one had some very mid reviews. Some people really, really like it. Some people are like, what is this nonsense? It is very slow paced. It is billed as a romance. I don't know if it is or it isn't. I just know that I had a good time with it. It's very much sci-fi, has to do with time travel and the protagonist who falls in love with her charge, which is kind of nice. Is it insta-love? Maybe a little, maybe a little, which I don't necessarily back, but I was feeling very good about this book. I feel like my time was not wasted reading it. Would I unhaul it eventually? Probably. I would probably also unhaul this one eventually, but I'm not in a hurry to do that right now. So Ministry of Time has to do with a government agency that brings people, dead people back to contemporary life, but people that would have died in their own timeline anyway, and who are very, very close to death in their own timeline anyway. And because the charge of our main character, who is unnamed in the novel, so just so you know that in case it's a trigger point for you guys, she's the handler for Lieutenant Gore, who is from the historic Franklin expedition. And that one was the ill-fated two ships, the Terror and the Erebus, who were sent to explore it was in the mid-1840s, the Northwest Passage, and there were no survivors from that expedition. But one of the lieutenants that would have been on that ship historically is then brought back into the current timeline here. And she like has to keep tabs on him and that kind of thing. So anyway, I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to give away the story for those of you who like want to read this book or haven't read it yet. But like I said, I had a good time with this one. It was not the best time. It was not a 5-star read for me, but it was not a 2-star read either. So I felt like it was 3.5 stars. I would keep it on my shelf for a time, but eventually probably unhaul it. That's the truth. But like I said, if you like time travel stories, if you like a slight romance that doesn't overtake the entire plot of the book, and it's got also sci-fi elements, I would recommend it. And then lastly, off my physical TBR, I finally picked up The Bat by Joe Nesbo, which I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing correctly, but that's how I'm going to say it for lack of more education at this point. And this was the first Harry Hole, I think is how you pronounce it, novel for his detective. So I think that this was translated or at least published in 1997, so he's had quite an opportunity to release more books with this detective character since then. But this is the first one in the series, and it was good. I actually had a really good time with this one, more than I thought I was going to. Now, when I read a mystery thriller, I just want to go on record as saying I never ever know. And I know I've said this before on the channel, but I'll say it again in case you're new here. I never know who the baddie is. I never know who the murderer is. I will never figure it out. I am so naive. If you tell me a story, I take your story at face value. I am not looking to see where the little red herrings are or the clues are that the author left or anything like that. I am like the biggest idiot when it comes to figuring out who the murderer is, so that every story, it's like I was born yesterday. I will not figure it out. So I don't tend to get upset or find plot lines necessarily predictable or annoying because I am deficient of the gene that helps me to figure out who done it. Like I will never get it right, never in a million years. So it's good for me to read these books because I'm never disappointed because I never know who the murderer is. And what I particularly liked about this book is that it took place in New South Wales, which is a state that I know pretty well, having visited Sydney a few times. And also it takes you on, you know, throughout the course of the investigation, it takes you to various places that I've also been when I visited Australia, like the super obscure town of Nimbin is mentioned here, which is kind of like an ex-hippie retreat, like, and of all places that I've been to in Australia, I happen to have visited Nimbin, so it was really easy for me to imagine what it looked like because I've literally visited there. So also in this book, it gives you a lot of Aboriginal tales and mythology and fables and stuff, which is really fun to sort of learn more about the Aboriginal culture. And there were some things that happened in this book which kind of like had me very angry, you know? And yeah, I just had a really good time with it. So someone had suggested to me, I think also on my Instagram, to pick up a Joe Nesbo book. So I listened to my Instagram followers, which, by the way, if you want to follow me on Instagram, the link for that is going to be down below in the description. I have 16 followers for now, so yay for all 16 of you, like 5 of which are my family, but that's besides the point. If you want to follow me, the link for that is going to be down below, and I would love to have you there because you can have some really like more candid conversations with me if you want, or see what I'm doing in my real life if that's of any interest to you. I don't know why it would be, but maybe it is. So I guess if you're here, you must be interested in something. But yeah, so someone had suggested to me that I pick up this one as well as The Ministry of Time. So 2 different people. So I listened to you both. And yeah, I had, maybe, was it Fina? I think it was Fina Reeds, who may have suggested to pick up the Joe Nesbo. So I listened to that and I had a great time with it. This one especially because I felt a sort of kinship to the setting of the novel. Now I have another Joe Nesbo book on my physical TBR, which I think is The Snowman, which I know has been made into a movie. Like I want to say somebody did something like a screen adaptation in 2017, according to my research, but the reviews on that movie were not terrific. They said that it really deviated from the story a lot. So I think that before I go ahead and watch that, I am going to read the book, which is something that I tend to prefer to do before I watch screen adaptations in any case. So that's going to be it for all of the books that I read in May. I am currently in the middle of The Man Who Sold Air in the Holy Land. So this is a collection of short stories and I'm about 100 pages into this one. It's a little over 200 pages, but I can tell you right away that this is like, it's an instant 5-star. I don't need to finish it to tell you that it's an instant 5-star. So we can talk about it more in the June reading wrap up when I tell you guys more about this. But just so that you know, like I'm not exactly annotating this book, but this one for me, like the 4 or 5 stories that I've read so far, I laughed, I cried. That's all I need for 5-star criteria in my world. So I haven't finished this book yet, but the writing is fantastic. If you guys are interested in short stories or if little slice of life vignettes, what I will tell you based on what I've read so far is that you're getting little slices of life of these different characters and these different stories, and they are non-apologetic. They are not trying to preach at you. They're not trying to tell you any morals or lessons or anything like that. It's not that. It's showing people at their most raw, their most vulnerable, when they're not being their best selves. And sometimes they don't even come to terms with who they are or why they do what they do. It's just like a little blind opening, a window sliding, just gives you a little peek into what's happening into these people's lives. And it's not passing judgments. It's not taking any kind of authoritative stance on these characters. And it's the kind of book where 2 middle school kids can go to a store, kidnap an old man, bring him home, tell him that he's going to live with them for a week, and the parents are kind of like, all right. And then the parents kind of just go about their business. Like no permission is required. Like it's such a weird thing, you know? Anyway, I didn't finish the book, but I'm telling you right away, it's a 5-star book. Like there's no way it's not going to be 5 stars by the time I'm done with it. So yeah, that's going to bring us to the end of the video today, you guys. I want to thank you so much if you've come to hang out with me today. I know it's a bit of a longer one. I had a lot of books to talk to you guys about this time. I'm going to finish this book. It'll be counted towards my June reads, not my May reads, but I wanted to let you know that 2 days before the end of the month of May, that is what I'm working on. So yeah, and then I'm gonna have to figure out what it is that I'm gonna be doing after that. I went to the library yesterday and took out 2 more books, even though I said I was not gonna do that, but I did because I needed a walk, and the library is like a half-an-hour walk from my house. So it's a good place to go. And then I got to walk a half an hour back. So I get an hour of walking in, which is really great. So even if I don't read the books, I could always walk back to return them, you know? So it's like a win-win-win. Books get taken out. It helps the library. So I don't always read my library books. I know I've said that before on the channel, but the important thing is that I'm taking them out. And if, you know, it also helps me to try authors that I'm not sure I'm going to like without spending money. So anyway, enough of that. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to my blah blah about all of the books that I read in May. And I hope to see you again in the next video, which is already uploaded and scheduled. And hopefully you guys will come back for that as well. I love you so much. Thank you again so much. And I'll see you again in the next video. Ciao for now.